Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Future Ready Leadership. My guest today, a repeat guest, and I can't remember if it's either two or three times, Patrick Lencioni, CEO of the Table Group, best-selling author of many, many books, including Five Dysfunctions of a Team and Working Genius. Patrick, thank you for joining me.
It's great to be here. Yeah, we couldn't remember if it was two or three. All I know is we were like, we love doing this podcast. So
Hey, you know what?
I'm
I'll
glad to
take
be
it.
back.
By the way, do most people call you Pat or Patrick?
Pat.
Pat. Okay, so we'll go with Pat. Well, last time we spoke, you were still living in the Bay Area in California. And people who listen to the show know that I'm a longtime resident, California, grew up here, raised here, lived in San Francisco, lived in Oakland, two different parts of Oakland, lived in Alameda. And then almost 4 years ago, we relocated to Southern California and Los Angeles because my family is here. And it was interesting because during the pandemic, we had all these crazy fires, especially in the Bay Area. I mean, a lot of things were going on in the Bay Area, but my wife kind of looked at each other, probably similar to you, and we're like, why are we still here? Our family's not here. It's kind of a crazy time. What are we still doing here? And we debated for a long time. Should we move? Where should we move to? We ended up coming to Southern California just because of family.
Yeah.
But I heard recently that you got out of the state altogether. You've abandoned us here. You've left me to fend in California by myself. So talk to us a little bit about some of the changes that you've been going through in your life. Where did you relocate to? Why did you relocate? And I think it's important to talk about that because it's important to kind of align to values, to beliefs, to things that make sense for you. And it's also very related to leadership as far as how you make decisions, things that you talk about, things that you believe in. So tell us what's been going on with you over the last, 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. So, wow, this has been an amazing 6 to 12 months, and very difficult and very beautiful and ultimately very good. Thank God for all of that. But so California, I was a native. I was born in Central California, which is in Bakersfield, which is a little slice of Oklahoma.
Oh, you were born in Bakersfield?
Yeah. Born and
Oh,
raised, which is not like California. People go, so you're from California? I'm like, no, I'm from Oklahoma. And they say, what part?
yeah.
Bakersfield,
Bakersfield
California.
is totally different.
Yeah. Central Valley, originally kind of ag and oil and country music and stuff. So it's a big sprawl. Like the other thing that's crazy about California is a town like Bakersfield, which doesn't even hit people's radar, has like almost 750,000 people living there.
Yep.
So even what people think of as small towns would be the second biggest city in most states.
And most people don't even realize how big California is. I mean, we have around 40 million people here. It's gigantic.
40 million.
Gargantuan.
There are towns that have more than 100,000 people that I've never heard of. They have names that I'm like, I don't even know where that town is.
Yeah.
And I've lived there my whole life. I did. So I lived there. I went to college in Southern California, and then I got a job in Northern California in San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco for years. And then we moved out and we had kids near Walnut Creek and all that. So I've lived in various places. Yeah. But it just changed. I mean, it's just for the reasons everybody knows. It changed socially, economically, crime, cleanliness, fires. And my wife and I both said also, like, okay, and we almost moved years ago, but we had kids in school and that certain area, it was really hard. And so when my youngest went away to college, we were like, this is the time to do it. And the affordability issue, but it was just not I felt like I was swimming upstream for so long, especially in these last 5-10 years. And the nation has changed. It's somebody used the word balkanized. There's just different parts. So we almost moved to Idaho because it was, but then we said, gosh, Tennessee, where I live, where we were ultimately moved. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of interesting business and cultural phenomenon and people doing things. And we knew a lot of people that had moved here. So we said, we're going to do that. So we settled just about a half hour south of Nashville in a place called Franklin. And we've been here 8 months.
Wow.
And I really love it. I feel at home. I can't believe, and this is one of those things, and I love California and wonderful friends that I have in California, but it's so easy to get to know people and make friends here. There's like you walk down the street, it takes a while to get used to, or you go into a business and the second time you go there, they remember you and they expect to get to know you. And like, I know the people that work at Circle K and at the store down the street and at the coffee shop. And it's weird in California, that just, YouTube are just like, it's a vendor and I'm in a store and they didn't expect it from me and I didn't expect it from them. And here it's like, no, no matter who we are, where we are in life, what stations of life and how, everybody's like, no, we're going to be friends probably, right? Because I'm going to see you on a regular basis. And just because I'm taking your dry cleaning or park next to you at church, we should probably be friendly and get to know each other.
Yeah.
It's been a real cultural change and a welcomed one.
So why, and I'm just curious, why Tennessee instead of like, I don't know, Florida, Texas, Idaho? 'Cause, there are lots of different places out there. And, candidly, even my wife and I have lots of friends here in California who you hear murmurings of let's get out of the state. And it's probably similar the way it happened with you, because I'm a little bit younger. Our kids are, I have a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts off as murmurings early on. And, you kind of don't really do anything with it. And then at some point you're like, uh-oh. Because we have a lot, like I said, a lot of friends, and everyone's just kind of like, yeah, California is becoming kind of a weird state. Like, where would we go to? Oh no, we're not really going to go. But
Right,
but
we went through that.
Yeah, but deep down below, you're kind of like, you get home and you look at your wife and you're like, hey, are they serious? Like, should we get out of here? And is that how kind of it started with you, where it was early on? You're like, things are getting a little strange, but it's okay. We can stay for a little bit. And the slow murmurings, and then years later, you're like, we got to get the hell out of here.
It's such an interesting question. And when I look back at it, my wife and I will talk and she'll go, I wanted to move 20 years ago. and I'm like, but then I look at, well, my company was early, the table group was, and I had these amazing employees and it was like family. And it still is. But what happened is many of those family members in the company said, we can't afford to live here. They were in a different stage in life and we got to move. And so there's this diaspora of people that are leaving. And what you realize is for every person that leaves, there's 3 others thinking about it that just can't quite do it yet because of family reasons or other things. So I'm glad that we didn't when we didn't, because I was building a company and things were growing and my kids were at a certain age. But the other reason I think people don't is because it's hard to imagine that you could actually feel comfortable someplace new.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just classic transition management stuff. It's like, but will I ever be happy there? And the thing is, it will be harder before it gets easier. And everybody said this to me, Pat, you're going to like it. You're going to love it. You'll never look back. But it was just so hard. And the thought of putting my kids through something that might not be good for them was hard too. But that doesn't mean you should always do that, because oftentimes they do fine. So now that we're just 8 months into it, as I look back, and thank God for everything. So you don't want to, there's reasons why things happen, but yeah, I'd have done it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And
I know you're a man of faith as well. I know you go to church. And I think this, not necessarily although I did have a very interesting conversation a couple months ago with kind of a religious scholar around the idea of leadership and values and things of that nature. But for a lot of people in leadership, how important do you think it is to have kind of that clear sense of direction and values? Because it goes to decision making, right? Like kind of going back and forth, picking a direction, sticking with it, your personal values and beliefs and how they impact and influence the way that you lead. How do you think all that kind of comes together when you think about leadership broadly?
Well, it's interesting. And I forgot, Jake, that you are a man of faith. I forgot that. And I'm going to tell you something interesting, because Matt was prepping me. He goes, you love this guy, remember? And he showed me a picture. I was like, oh, I love doing that. And he said, Dad, don't worry, because Matt's my son. You have so much fun whenever you talk. And I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. But because and I said, where is he located again? He goes, he's in Southern California. My initial thought was, oh, so it's probably not a faith-friendly podcast. Friendly. And I don't mean like it's overtly all about faith. Yeah, maybe this would be one where I might mention it, but that's the crazy thing, is that it got to the point in California where I assume when I'm walking down the street that that's not something that's probably going to be brought up in conversation along with other things.
Yeah.
And I think that's that cultural thing. And so it's interesting because we look at a company and we say, or like, what's culture? And you want it to be inclusive. But what's interesting about that is that a culture has to be about something, And if it's completely inclusive, then it's not about anything. Jim Collins used to talk about this in his first book, I think, Built to Last, or the first one I remember. And he said, the reason why they call it a culture, and the word cult is in there, not because it's a cult, is
Yeah.
because there are people that would go, oh, I wouldn't want to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And when companies try to be inclusive about everything, they actually aren't inclusive about anything.
Yeah.
And for me, Jacob, I wanted to live someplace where I didn't feel like my faith in Jesus was going to be a topic not to be discussed.
Yeah. Where people look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah, and it's not that, and by the way, I love all people, even people without faith and all, of course, but I wanted to live someplace where it didn't feel like I was an outsider. Now, but before I moved, I thought maybe I should stay in California and be a missionary, you know? But I said, if I'm going to stay in California, I said to my wife, I would have to feel called by God to actually make that my primary job.
Hmm.
But since it's not my primary job, I mean, it is my primary job to be a follower of Jesus, and I try to live that in everything I do. Boy, it felt dry. It just felt like it just didn't come up. And it wasn't that people weren't just against it. It was more like indifferent, like why I don't really care about that. And so I just thought, I do want to live in a place where that might be a topic of conversation at Circle K.
Yeah.
Or, like somebody might say, and I could say, God bless you. And they're like, thank you. Oh,
Yeah.
God bless you too. And that doesn't mean that everybody here is a believer. And it doesn't mean we're still not sharing our faith with new people. It got hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get it. And it's interesting that you mentioned kind of this inclusion aspect. And I think it's why some companies out there, like Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, when he's announcing everybody to get back to work or back into the office, he's very candid and says, this company is not for everybody. Right. And if you don't want to work here, that is okay.
And you're not a bad person.
Yeah. And that's a very different message than other companies who say we want to be everything to everybody. But it's kind of an interesting debate, because the topic of inclusion, pretty much every company out there says we want everybody to work here. We want to be welcome to everybody. So how do you balance the idea of being welcome to everybody while at the same time not trying to be everything to everyone, because that's not realistic, right? So how do you
And are
how
we
did we
talking
even
about
get
in
to
an
that?
organization?
Yeah, in an organizational setting. And how do we even get to that? Because I don't feel like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, companies were really saying that, right? There used to be kind of like, if you work here, this is what it's like. Not for everybody, but if you want it, you think about working at GE, for example. You knew when you were working for Jack Welch what you were getting. There was no, these types of conversations didn't exist. So
Right.
what's going
And
on
so
there?
you opted in or didn't opt in. Like there's people back then who would go, I don't want to work for GE
Yeah.
because this is what they're like. Or I want to work for HP, or I don't want to work for this. But what happened, here, this is a great question, by the way, Jacob. And I believe what happened was society had more common values. And so you thought, well, I'm going to go to work there. And there is some interesting things that make that culture what it is. But generally speaking, I'll probably fit in unless it's about that thing. But what happened in our society is that it has become more balkanized. And this is one of those things, like at your age, and then you look at my age, you talk to people a little older than me, it's been slowly happening. And we are now a nation of a lot of division
Yeah.
around some basic things that used to not be divisive.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have to just be clear. And so what does that mean for an organization? It means this. You need to be very clear about what it means to be a good fit. And you need to know what those 2 or 3 things are that are absolutely inviolable. And I like to say, just to get people's attention, and be brutally exclusive, brutally intolerant. I like to say that. Be brutally intolerant of hiring people or accepting behavior that doesn't align with those 2 or 3 things. And then beyond that, you can be wonderfully inclusive. But the problem is if you don't know what you stand for, because then if somebody applies for a job there, I mean, I've interviewed people and we've gotten into the culture stuff, and I thought, man, you're a wonderful person. I know places you'd be great to work at. I don't think you'd like it here.
Yeah.
That wasn't me saying you're not good enough or you're less than or I don't like you. It was saying like, if it's going to be a fit, you want to know that. And if it's not, it's just as kind to help people know that. And I
Yeah.
recommend employees like, oh, that company would be a really good fit for your values. Now, the problem is, Jacob, to get into this a little bit more, is that what happened is in the last 10 years, a lot of companies shifted their cultural basis because of what was going on in society. And we don't even need to go into all of that kind of stuff, woke and all that. And so there were tons of people that worked in companies that essentially shifted the foundation of what they believed underneath them, but didn't acknowledge. It really would have been better if they'd said, hey, you know something? We're changing our culture. And a lot of you probably don't want to work here anymore. And we would invite you to consider working someplace else, not in a mean way. That would have actually been an act of kindness because clarity is kind. But what they did is they slowly changed and then expected the people who didn't buy into all that to just be quiet about it.
Mm.
And suddenly we had all these people working in companies that were like, well, when I joined here, I didn't have to believe that, and that. Now you're saying I have to affirm that, and that. And if I say anything else, you'll fire me. What you should have said is, hey, we've changed. And so you've worked here for years. Probably now this isn't a good place for you anymore if you don't believe these certain things. Now, what's happening today, Jacob, is that companies are finally starting to realize we shouldn't be weighing into those things.
Yeah.
If we're a hotel or a beverage company or a consulting firm and we believe in these values and it has nothing to do with these social issues, then why are we wading into those social issues? Because we're alienating half of our employees or half of our customers.
Yeah. And I always tell a lot of organizations, and I think a lot of it is because leaders, they're scared to upset people. So they always want to play in the gray area, right? They always want to be inclusive of everybody. And, we don't want to say the wrong thing. And I always tell leaders, the biggest fear that you should have is not that you're going to upset people. It's that people don't know what you stand for to begin with.
Right.
And because it's okay, like if you upset people, and it's okay if they don't agree with you, and it's okay if they don't believe in the same things that you believe in. That means it's not a good fit, and maybe you shouldn't be on the same team or in the same company. But if somebody joins and they're like, nah, I don't really know what Pat cares about. I don't know what Pat believes in. I don't know what
Oh,
Pat
gosh.
stands for. Like, I guess I'll take this job. And kind of Pat seems like a nice guy. And then you start working there. And then you're like, wait a minute. Like, I didn't know these things. Pat never told me. So being clear about what you value, what you care about, what it's like to work there, how much time you're going to need to put in, if you need to be in the office, just be honest about that stuff. And don't
Yeah.
paint this rosy picture of like, what you wish it was like, right? You got to be honest.
Yeah. And if you're a relatively small company, it's okay to be, hey, we're all very conservative or very liberal, or we're all into this, or we're all into that. Be upfront. When you're not, then somebody comes there and that's when lawsuits happen and they feel like you're treating me poorly. Well, you started treating them poorly when you weren't honest about what you believed.
Yeah.
Or if you're a company that's like, we don't really care about that and we don't want to, we would say, if you think that you need to come to work and be extremely conservative or extremely liberal, then this might not be the place for you. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. And again, it doesn't matter which side or what issue you have. It could be we're very faith friendly, or we're not very interested in that. And if bringing your faith to work is important to you, then this might not be the place for you. That's actually kind.
Yeah. One of the few companies, you look at In-N-Out, right, where they still print Bible verses on the bottom of their cups and on a lot of their materials. And they've been doing that, I don't know how many decades. But there's no mistake that like people know that that is the kind of company, right? There's a faith-based or Chick-fil-A, like, right? You work at that kind of organization and you know that faith is a very big part of how the company was founded, what the founders believed in, probably what a lot of the leaders believe in, and that's okay. And you know what?
Yeah.
They're welcoming for you, but if you are not comfortable with that, then you probably shouldn't work at those types of organizations.
Right. And they all, and I know those people, those companies, and they wouldn't say, hey, you have to go to church to work here.
Yeah.
You have to believe it. But what they would say is, if it's uncomfortable for you to be in an environment where that is acceptable conversation, that's it. And so they're not like radically exclusive. They're just honest. And like, if I were getting out of college and I were working at some place and they said, hey, we really aren't comfortable with people being religious at all. We're not going to want you to ever have anything in your cubicle about this or that. We just find that to be really, that's a good thing to know. And wouldn't it be great to go like, hey, I want to work at a company that aligns with my values and what I believe. And it should be like a job fair where you walk in and find the right fit, not where people are telling you generic things only to have you get surprised later.
And the concept of inclusivity is also an interesting one. So I have a CHRO group called Future of Work Leaders, and a couple of days ago we were having a conversation, and a lot of the CHROs agreed that we over-indexed a lot on well-being and creating these safe places and trying to just right. And then what ends
Yes.
up happening is that you remove resilience, you remove ownership, you remove accountability and responsibility from people, and the consensus that I hear and what I see is that a lot of these organizations are becoming the new parents for their employees,
Yeah.
and they're scared to tell them like, hey, you're an adult, like you gotta figure your stuff out. I can we can have conversations, maybe I can coach you and mentor you, but you can't show up to work and say, I can't manage my money, I don't have friends, I'm lonely, I'm disengaged, I'm not taking care of myself, hey, fix me. Right? That's
You know,
not It's not the
yeah.
company's job or responsibility to do that kind of stuff.
St. Thomas Aquinas always said that the truth is that like virtue lies in the middle. It's like not on one end. It's like, and so like in this case, so should we be a company that's like, hey, you're on your own. We don't care about you as a person. Or should it be one that says, we are going to be all things and buffer you from, and it's like, no, the truth is in the middle. And that is, I think companies should be interested in the well-being of their employees and interested enough to tell them the truth and say, hey, listen, if you have a problem with this, this, and this, you're not going to be a responsible human being. There may be classes that you can sign up for. We'll let you know about those, but that's up to you.
Yeah.
We cannot baby you through this. And I know you just did a recent podcast about work is hard.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be hard. That doesn't mean we're going to make it miserable. That doesn't mean we're going to grind on you. But if you're looking for something that's always comfortable, always easy, and where we're going to flex to every unaddressed issue that you have, that's not going to work. We're also going to have enough mercy to realize you're going to have a bad day or something's going to go on in your life. Or maybe we could create an opportunity for you to go improve yourself, but we're not going to make you do that. And we're not going to tolerate if you don't want to do that. So it's in the middle. And yeah, are the pendulum swings, the factory, the reason why we used to have unions, because it's like you work in a coal mine and you're going to die of black lung and we don't give a damn. And then we went to, oh, you don't have to come to work or wear pants if you don't want to. And it's like,
Well, it's funny. I was one of the CHROs in our group was mentioning that she has employees who are taking stress days, right? So the company offered this thing called stress days, and she's like, I can't tell you how many employees on my team are on a stress day right now. And the problem with that is you can't, like, if your kid doesn't go to school, you need a doctor's note. You go to the
yeah,
doctor, and the
right.
doctor says, oh yeah, the child had a fever, they were throwing up. When companies offer things like a stress day, an employee could just say, nah, I'm a little stressed today, I don't want to show up to work. And we've gotten to this point where we forget that yes, sometimes work is stressful. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Sometimes you have to put in long hours. Sometimes you got to do stuff you don't want to do. That doesn't mean that it's a stress day or that you're burned out. And so one of the things that drives me nuts with a lot of these burnout surveys and disengagement surveys, there's no clear definition of what any of these things are, first of all.
No.
And a lot of these things are all self-reported. And so, right, if you ask somebody, hey, are you burned out or stressed? Yeah. Does that mean that I can't show up to work? No. Why don't you teach me how to deal with a stressful day? Like
Right.
you, I have lots of stressful days. I have lots of days where sometimes I put in 12, 13, 14 hours and yeah, I'm a little burned out. And you know what I need to do? I need to go relax. I need to go sit in the sauna. I need to go eat something healthy, go for a walk. And you know what? I'm good the next day. I'm not taking a week off of work or calling in a stress day. Like, like sometimes it just boggles my mind. And I talk about this with my dad, who's in his mid 70s, and he can't believe some of the stuff that's going out there. And it's not to be insensitive, but it's
Not
to
at
say
all.
that, yeah, but it's to say that the reality of work has just been completely transformed as far as what the picture that we're painting versus the reality of what it is. And
Yeah.
it's always interesting for me how we got here. Like I remember commuting an hour and a half to work each way, sitting in an office for 10 hours. And I would do that every day. I didn't have, if somebody said, Jacob, do you want a stress day? Every day would be a stress day for me. I would never show up in the office.
What's really stressful is not having a job and having any ability to contribute. And you know what I mean? That's what we don't understand. But getting back full circle to what you said about why we moved from California, because like when you said like, oh, and I have this CHRO, let me tell you, a CHRO in Tennessee is not going to be doing the same thing. In California, there's this expectation like, oh, it's a daycare center and you have to do all this stuff. And the culture in places like this in Texas and Florida are not like, there's much more of a, hey, you know, you got to be responsible.
Have you noticed that difference?
It's so different. People
Really?
don't expect to be coddled here.
Interesting.
In other words, and it's culture. It's just like culture matters. And I'm sure you could pick other states. I'm sure in Oregon, it's much more like, oh, we got to let people do all this other stuff. And Oregon's beautiful. I have many friends there. But the culture is kind of crazy. And it's not just, it seeps into businesses. It seeps into human resources because then they start reflecting that or trying to, and it's like, there's other places that are like, hey, young man, your grandfather was a farmer and your grandmother worked her to the bone. You can work hard. And again, it's not the pendulum going all the other way. But let me tell you, so here's in my company, now we're small, so I can do this here. I'm very big on hiring for culture. This is why.
How many people do you have?
We have 15 employees.
Okay.
And we have a whole bunch of like contractors and friends of the firm that work with. We have a bigger ecosystem. But for the employees that we have, from the very beginning, I said, listen, I don't want a bunch of policies. I want to hire people that are humble, that are not ego-driven, that care about the rest of the team, that are hungry, that they just have this work ethic, and they're interpersonally aware. They're smart, humble, hungry, smart. Then I want to turn them loose. And so when people come here, they're like, what's your policy for maternity leave when you have a baby? And I'm like, whatever you need. And somebody said, how can you do that? I'm like, because of the people we hire. I remember the first woman that in our company that had a baby, I said, I don't care, take 4 months off, take as much you're going to know when you can come back. But because we had values and I knew why I hired her, I wasn't worried about it at all. And somebody said, well, she could take advantage of that. I said, watch. And 3 weeks into having her baby, she's like, I have some time. I'm going to run payroll from here. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. She goes, no, I'm kind of bored and I have some flexibility. And so she cared enough about the company where she made it work. And that flexibility makes people feel like I'm an owner and I'm contributing and I want to go above and beyond for the company.
Yeah.
Whereas if I had a hard and fast policy or had stress days, if an employee in my company comes to me and says, Pat, things are crazy at my house and my grandmother just passed away, or I'd be like, hey, you go take care of that. Because you know why? She or he owns her own stuff. She's going to work extra hard to get caught up when it makes sense.
Yep.
So I don't coddle my employees, but if I hired people indiscriminately, so we hired a woman once, Jacob, and I told her, I said, here's how it works around here. You decide when you need time off. You take as much vacation as you need, but you own your stuff, and we don't always hire perfectly. She came in and we sent her to get trained, and she came back the next day and said, I'm not going to come to work. And she'd been there like a month. And I said, why? And she goes, I'm really tired from traveling, from the training we went to. And we were like, yeah, but you got work to do. The team needs you. And that was a training thing. It wasn't like a hardship. And she goes, well, you said, we get to do that. And so you know what we did? We didn't change the policy. We helped her find another place to work.
Yeah.
Everybody else honored the flexibility they had. Don't make a policy for people that you shouldn't have hired.
CHROs just like you have been telling me that they want a community of their peers, but specifically focused on the future of work and employee experience. I've been hearing this for around 10 years, and now I'm finally putting something together. It's called Future of Work Leaders. It's a collection of 100 of the world's top CHROs moving beyond traditional HR, specifically focused on the future of work and employee experience. I took everyone's feedback. I heard what CHROs just like you wanted. They don't want to spend a ton of money. They don't want speeches. They don't want upselling or cross-selling. They don't want any fluff. They just want to connect with their peers to focus on strategy, on insights, and on solving real-world problems, and on helping their organization become future-ready. So if that sounds like something you are interested in, check out futureofworkleaders.com. You'll be joining CHROs from brands like Dow, Lego, Neiman Marcus, Johnson & Johnson, and dozens of others. Again, it's futureofworkleaders.com. I can promise you, you will be glad that you checked it out, and I hope to see you in there. It's funny. As you were speaking, I got a note on some of the LinkedIn trending topics today, and one of the top trending stories: the boss has had it with all the office activists. Trending story, Wall Street Journal, where a lot of executives are saying we have had enough of all of this. And
Hallelujah.
yeah, so I know there's some people that are going to be listening to this that are going to be thinking, wow, Jacob and Pat, you are so insensitive. The workplace has changed. It's not the same as it used to be. Gen Z's struggling. There's an affordability crisis. They can't find housing. How do you balance? And there are some executives out there who genuinely believe that, like, I do want to take care of my people. Like, I want to do a good thing for them. I want to help them out when I can. How do you balance the idea of trying to help your employees and care for them? Because again, we're not talking about being mean to your employees or berating them or anything like that, but also you need to have the accountability. So how do you like, what's the balance between the well-being, the empathy, the caring versus you're an adult, work hard, make sacrifices. Sometimes you have to go above and beyond. Where's the middle there? How do you find that?
I think the middle is actually where you have to be, and that is you're not doing them a favor by letting them be an activist and have a committee meeting about something that didn't matter and taking stress days and all that. That's not in their best interest. So if you say, I love my employees, so I do that, you actually aren't loving them because it doesn't make them better.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you're just making them work and you're like, I don't care if you have personal interest and you have no outlet for that, that's not love either. So the balance is saying, first, you are here to contribute to the well-being of your team and the company and everybody else. Like we say, humble, hungry, and smart. Secondly, we know you have other interests. And when those interests can be combined with stuff going on here, that's great. But if you're taking time and efforts that are not aligned with the company and it's making other people frustrated, then that's not good. So it's like if a person says, I'm an activist for animal rights, I'd be like, good for you. That's something for you to do on your own time. I'm guessing you're probably going to want to talk about animals sometimes at work. That's nice. We could talk about that at lunch and you can express that. But if you start to think this is your platform for doing that, no, that's your life. So it's a judgment call, but it's not that hard. It's like, is this good for this place and for you? Or am I coddling you and encouraging you to do something that's divisive?
Yeah.
Well,
It's
and I
funny
think
because
that,
when I interviewed a lot of these, so I had Amy Edmondson, Peter Capelli, a lot of these people who did research on psychological safety. And even when I interviewed them, they were very candid. And they're like, people took these concepts that we helped pioneer and create, and they turned it into something that we had no intention of it being.
no.
And very few people realize that. A lot of people assume psychological safety means every idea is good. You live in a bubble. You should never be upset. Everything is fine. But even in Peter Capelli's article, he says that just a little bit of psychological safety is enough. Just the idea that you're creating an environment where people can challenge an idea or ask a question, that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And even in his article, like I'm pulling it up here, which people are want to look at it. It's at the Knowledge at Wharton. They published this whole thing. And in it, he said, I was surprised that people assumed there was not a limit to psychological safety. They always assume that more is better. And he said, people are always talking about the benefits, but they're never talking about the consequences. And it was spot on, where he was basically saying, just because a company talks about psychological safety doesn't mean you're never going to get upset or offended. Doesn't mean you're not going to get candid feedback or work hard or go above and beyond. It just means that if you have an issue, you can go to Pat and say, hey, Pat, can we chat? Like, that's the idea of psychological safety, that you feel safe enough to speak up and talk to your leaders and your peers. Not that, right? If I come to you with something, you're like, Jacob, I got to be honest with you. I've heard some of your ideas, and you've had some really good ideas in the past, but I think you need to work on this one a little bit. Right? I might be like, oh, that sucks. But that's not, psychological safety doesn't mean that you have to say, it's okay, Jacob. That's a good idea still, right? It doesn't mean that you need to do that inside of a company. And I think a lot of leaders just took it to the nth degree, and it's blown up to what it's not supposed to be. So one more quote I want to read from Peter Capelli is he said, the idea behind psychological safety is that we should not fear ridicule or being put down in contexts where we are trying to learn or be creative. It was never meant to suggest that there should be no consequences for poor performance or not following the rules, nor was there much evidence that it was helpful in more routine jobs where creativity and learning is not a central activity. And so, yeah, I mean, and he was one of the creators and founders of this, along with Amy Edmondson, who did some pioneering work on this too. And you talk to Amy Edmondson and some of these people, they have a very tough love approach, right? Work hard,
Right.
go above and beyond, like stop screwing around. There are bad ideas. You should be challenged. They never say the opposite of this.
It's so interesting. I think that because I lived through this whole, I've been working now for almost 40 years since high school, since college. And so I've seen this take root. And I'm seeing it now. I think the Gen Z people don't want it anymore, by the way. I think it's it's boomers. And I hate to say boomers because it's age isn't the whole thing, but it's like, I think it's the older folks, because I'm very close to a boomer, but not quite there, that got into HR and were like, let's coddle. And I don't know where that came from. There's probably sociologists can tell you where it came from. But I think we're entering a period where we need to realize that life involves suffering and discomfort.
Yeah.
And to deprive a person of experiencing certain kinds of suffering and discomfort is to deprive them of growth and learning.
Yeah.
And so even if you have the most bleeding heart, and I'm kind of a bleeding heart person, you're actually hurting a person and making them less resilient by not letting them learn from their circumstances.
It's like kids. I mean, I have two kids,
Oh,
and sometimes they have problems and stuff like that. And I say, go figure it out. Like even in the mornings when my kids are
You're
carrying,
so mean. I can't believe you said that. You should do it for them.
exactly. I mean, even in the mornings when my kids are carrying their backpacks out and they assume that I'm going to carry it, I'm like, carry your own bags to the car. Or,
Right.
we eat breakfast. I'm like, I don't know who you think is cleaning up after you here, but you live in this house, clean up after yourself.
Yeah.
Or they have a problem at school, or they say something like the other day, my daughter got in trouble. I guess she said something mean to a child. So we took my daughter to my neighbor's house, which is where the child lived. And I said, you're going to go apologize face to face to the mom and the daughter. Right? She's like, no, I'm going to write a note. I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to go look them in the eye and you're going to go apologize to them because you screwed up. And so if we do that with kids, and I hope people would do that with kids, then why inside of an organization, when an employee screws up or when they say something wrong, would we not also challenge them and say, hey, Pat, respectfully, that's not right. And we can debate it. We can argue about it. And there's a right way and a wrong way to debate and argue. But the idea that we need to create an environment where every idea is good, and if you're having a poor performance and you're struggling for the quarter, that I can't come to you and say, hey, Pat, just to let you know, your poor performance is impacting the business and we really need you to step it up and try to figure, like, is there anything I can do to help you? But I'm just letting you know that if this continues, we're going to have another conversation soon and it's not going to go well.
Hey, as you're saying this, Jacob, I'm thinking we should interview for that.
Yeah.
We should interview for people like, tell me how you feel about being told that your performance is poor and needs to improve. Tell me how you feel about somebody saying, I don't think that's a good idea. Because really, resilience, in addition to humility and hunger and all those things, but resilience is so important. And if you hire people that are so afraid of that discomfort and what that means, you're probably going to have to do so much work to get around that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that, gosh, that's such an interesting point, that if people don't think that's appropriate and they've never had to practice that, your daughter will be in work someday and will remember either overtly or slightly that my dad made me look somebody in the eye and told them that it was my fault. And that will help her in very specific ways later in life.
Well, the other day, so she's she competes in chess tournaments and she plays chess. And sometimes it's a little bit of a battle. Oh,
that's great, because she loses sometimes.
Yes. And sometimes it's a little bit of a battle for her to do work. And the other day we got in like this whole argument. And I went upstairs and she was upset. She was crying in her room. And I took out a piece of paper and I drew a little graph. And she was upset because at school, when the teacher that you get, especially when you're younger, makes a big difference. And some kids are like, oh,
Oh.
I want this teacher because they're easy. They don't give any homework. Oh, you got this teacher because they're hard. And so, of course, what happened for my daughter is her friends got this great teacher. Oh, he doesn't give homework. He's super chill, laid back. And my daughter gets the teacher who has the reputation of like, I'm mean and evil, and you're going to get homework every day, and I'm going to like make your life hell. Which of course was exaggerated. That's not quite how the teacher was, but the teacher is a tough and a
Yeah.
challenging teacher. And my daughter was devastated. She's like, I can't believe I got this teacher. And she's crying and freaking out. And I went upstairs and I took out a sheet of paper and I said, do you want to be person A or person B? And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? And so I drew a little chart for her and I said, person B is the person who's always looking for the shortcuts. They want the easy teacher. When they're playing in a chess tournament, they want to play the person who's lower rated than them so that they win. If they're playing in a sport, they want to play somebody who's a little bit worse rated so that they win. They want the easy route. They want the shortcuts. And it might seem like a good idea now. And I plotted a chart over time and I drew like success on the other axis. And I said, person B, it seems like a good idea now, but when you look long term, that person is never going to be as successful. And person A is the one who wants the hard teacher. They want the hard challenges. They want to play people who are better than them. They're going to make sacrifices. They're going to go through obstacles. They're going to cry. They're going to be upset. But you know what? In the long run, that person is going to be most successful. And
Yeah.
person B is the type of person who's going to work for person A. And I said, right now, Naomi, I'm going to give you a choice. I'm going to love you regardless of which choice that you pick. Do you want to be person A or do you want to be person B? And she said, I want to be person A. And I said, okay, well, then if you want to be person A, then the next time your friends are making fun of you that you have this hard teacher, you tell them, you know what? I want the hard teacher because
Oh, I
I
love
want
it.
I want the extra work. I want to do those challenging things. And so she decided she wants to be person A. And now whenever she's doing her work, I'm like, good job, person A. And she gets this little smile on her face and she does. And I talk to her all the time and I say, well, is your class as bad as you thought? And she's like, no, it's actually not that bad. And I said, yeah, because you changed your mindset, not because you changed anything else.
My son is a sophomore in college. He's my youngest son. Um, and the truth is, in college now, you can know everything about the class and the teachers and before you sign up. And I get it. A lot, they go for the easiest teachers, the least amount of things that you can get a good grade for doing the least amount of work. And and they've been enabled to do that. Like, they give them the information. It was so much better when you didn't get the choice.
Yeah.
It's like, because life does not present you with those choices. But now, colleges are a real problem. I will say this. College is so much easier than it was when I was in school. And that's not this, because we walked uphill in the snow both ways. It's because everything is at their fingertips. And colleges are really competing for these kids that pay a lot of money. So they're putting
Yep.
all their money in the gymnasium and the food. And then they're making, like, there's kids that go to school and take online classes, even though they could walk across the street
Oh,
and go to a room,
I
but
went
they
to
do it online.
I went to UC Santa Cruz, which
You're
beautiful.
kidding.
Yeah, beautiful
Oh,
campus. But I
yeah,
remember
I know all about it.
some of the classes that you could take there, it's like option to be graded. And at
Yeah.
the time, I remember, oh, that's so cool. Option to be, I'm going to like chill out and I'm not going to take the graded class. And, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'm just going to take it easy. And then after a while, I was like looking at people around me and everyone's going out to parties and getting drunk. And I was having conversations with people and they're like, just so you know, if you don't do well in college, you're not going to get a good job. And so I double majored in economics and business management and psychology. And I noticed that on the psychology side, that's where you could get the non-graded stuff. But when I was
Exactly.
doing the economics and the statistics classes, those teachers were like, dude, what do you mean not graded? Like, are you joking me? And so I worked my ass off and I graduated with honors there, but for the first time when I joined the school the first semester, I did the non-graded stuff. And then something clicked in my brain as I was looking at everybody around me and thinking like, I don't think you're going to end up successful. I don't think you're going to end up success. Like, I don't know about your future. And then I was looking at myself and thinking, well, if I don't know about their future and I'm on that same path, I should probably do something different.
I know a number of people that went to Santa Cruz, the banana slugs.
Oh yeah.
And I think one of two things happens there. You go there and you see that part of the culture that's there, and you experience it just enough to go, that's crazy. And so you become, and it's like the best lesson you can learn when you're at that age, seeing the the craziness of not being held accountable can make you even better. So I
Yeah.
know a lot of people that came out of Santa Cruz that are actually really hardworking. And if you ask them, they'll joke about the things they saw, and it made them the opposite. And then there's the people that went there and fully embraced it and expected the rest of life to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly true. And it's interesting. I remember my dad, he went there on a graduation day, and the valedictorian was giving a speech. And, he just thought it was a beautiful campus and stuff like that. He didn't realize how kind of like lax in some of the areas it was. And the valedictorian was talking about abolishing prisons, and she was going off and on. And my dad was just like, where the hell did I send you to school? Like,
Ah,
even to this day, he's like, you know what? I cannot believe you got out of that school and you're normal. And my wife went to the same school too, but we didn't know each other at the time. Um, and it's interesting. There's just a very stark difference because I had a balance between the liberal arts side with psychology and
yeah.
also the STEM side with economics, and just the different ways that they approach educating and teaching. It was mind blowing to me.
Well, and you know
Um,
what's funny? There were other people that knew how crazy some of that was that were there, but I do know enough to know that you couldn't be very loud about that. The prevailing culture was, "Oh, this is great," and there's a lot of people going, "This is kind of crazy," but I'm just gonna work hard and get out of here.
yeah, yeah. Stay quiet and then get out of there. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, and I thought maybe in the last few minutes we could talk about just the realities of leadership, because one of the things that I'm seeing and I hear from a lot of CHROs is that there are a lot of employees out there who are not living in the reality. It's sort of like Doctor Strange from was it
Yes,
Marvel or DC? I don't want people yelling
yeah.
at me, but I think it's Marvel. Or no, maybe it's I don't know. I don't want to get yelled at by
I think
anybody.
it's Marvel. I
Marvel,
think
yeah.
it's
But
Marvel.
Doctor Strange kind of warping time, and I think a lot of people have this misconception that if you get good grades and if you work 32 to 40 hours a week and you just don't show up to the office, that eventually you're becoming a director, an SVP, an EVP, and a CEO. And I can't tell you how many executives and CEOs or CHROs I've either worked with or have interviewed who make ridiculous sacrifices to get to where they are. Missing important events from kids, having to live in separate houses from their family for a while because they're going through a difficult time like earnings, and they have calls at 2 and 5 in the morning. The CEO of Sam's Club, who I interviewed on my podcast, telling me he's working 80 hours a week and takes his kids with him to go visit the Sam's Club stores. And the reality is that leadership is not for everybody. That's why there's so few of them. That's why there's one CEO, one CFO, one CHRO, et cetera. Few directors, few SVPs. What for people listening and watching who are um, under the misconception that doing just enough will get you into that executive role, and then they're upset when they don't get it. What is the reality of getting into a leadership role?
I think that I wrote a book called The Motive, which is about why do you want to be a leader? And that's the first thing. It's like, what's my and it's not like we don't change over time. We have to always ask ourselves this. And the two possible motives are: I'm doing it because it's good for me, like in other words, the personal economics are good, or I'm doing it for others because I'm willing to take a job where my job is to take on sacrifice and suffering at times for the good of others. And if we get into leadership, whether you want to be the CHRO of a company, the CEO, or the leader, the team lead, and you're in the Burger King where you're working at, being a leader means I will suffer a little bit more than the people under my charge.
Yeah, and
It's
oftentimes a
like
lot
being a
more.
parent. What's
Yeah,
that?
and oftentimes suffer a lot more.
Yeah. And so when that time happens, if the motive is clear, you're like, oh yeah, this is why I did that. And then, as you said with your daughter, your mindset changes. And you can even say to your family, hey, I'm a leader at work. And so these people that work for me, I need to provide for you guys, but there's other people depending on me. And your mom has to help them. And then they can go, oh, that's a really noble thing, Mom, that you do that.
Yeah,
But if you think that the personal economics of leadership are supposed to break in your favor, and that so many leaders do. So many kids come out of school, I want to be a CEO. And you say, why? And if you really pump them full of truth serum, they would say, because I think it would be cool. I
yeah,
could make a lot of money. I'd be influential and it would be more fun. And this is the most dangerous one because it doesn't seem like a big deal. I can show up to work and choose what I want to work on based on what looks fun to me.
yeah,
And so if you're a leader, make sure you and the people that you live with and you serve and the people that you work with know that I know I'm signing up for something hard, and then draw lines, healthy lines where it's like, it's not supposed to be that bad. Because
Yeah.
sometimes what happens is we complain about it, then we get addicted to it and we resent it, but it becomes our identity. And like the Sam's Club guy, I would go, I think you need to, but good for you for taking your kids with you, because they'll remember that, and that's a great learning experience. But there's a time where you have to go, maybe by agreeing to do this, I'm enabling us not to solve the real problem.
Yeah.
But the main thing I want to say is it is supposed to be hard, and it's okay not to be a leader.
Exactly.
Just like it's okay not to work at this company.
Yeah.
It's okay to be
if you're okay doing 32 hours a week and not going into the office, that's okay. But then don't get upset if you're not up for promotion.
Right.
Right. You have to have a reality between the inputs that you put in versus the expectations of where you think those inputs are going to get you. And I think there's a big disconnect that a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to take some online classes and I completed my learning and training and development program, but I don't show up to the office and I'm working 32, 40 hours a week. Why am I not getting promoted? I want to be the director.
Well, it's just like your daughter. Do you want to be leader A or leader B? Leader B takes the little bit of the easier way, takes care of themselves, wants to make sure they make good money and that they're well respected, but don't have to do a lot of hard things. Ultimately, people don't respect them, and they probably aren't going to get that promotion. If they do, it's going to be in a company that's so messed up that's promoting for the rank. Or leader A, or and when they go, gosh, I can't believe I'm still here. Oh yeah, I chose leader A.
Yep.
I chose the right one.
Pat, I feel like I could talk to you for another 2
I know,
hours.
me too.
It went by so quickly. Where can people go to learn more about you and grab some of your stuff?
The website is called tablegroup.com. Tablegroup.com, and all of our stuff is there. But then Working Genius, which is a big part of what we're doing, and boy, if you work in human resources, understand your genius. Know that one CHRO is not the same as another CHRO. One CEO is not the same. And stop feeling guilty and ashamed about the things you're not great at, because you weren't meant to be great at those. So go to workinggenius.com. In 12 minutes, you can take this assessment. People in organizations, when they know this stuff about each other, it changes the way they work together. It changes the way they see themselves. It changes how they go about getting joy and energy from their work. And that is a great way to bring this full circle, because then people can work hard and not burn out, because they're doing the kind of work that feeds them. Helping a person that has burnout problems by just having them do less is usually not going to solve that problem.
I love it. So. Pat, as usual, thank you for taking time out of your day. Really appreciate it.
Hey, call anytime, and I'd love to be on again. God bless.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Future Ready Leadership. If you want to get access to more content on how you can become future ready, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter. It's thefutureorganization.com/newsletter. And if you enjoyed this episode, please send it to somebody who you would like to see become a better leader. Thanks for listening or watching, and I will see you next time.